see us in 5 years?
I see us the same size as NetJets. I see our fleet in the mid 200s. I think we go from 144 today to 220 aircraft. I think they go from 340 to 220.
Wow.
Okay? Who buys me a beer if I'm right?
I will.
We all will.
All right. Well, this is mainly directed towards the 300, 350 fleet. Our red label planes look really nice.
Oh, yeah.
And we get a lot of compliments on them. However, some of our older airplanes in the fleet, particularly the 300s, don't. What's the plan for those?
You know, the plan was, the plan, again, measuring the fact that we need planes for 16-hour days, we can only take so many planes out of service at one time. I think there's still high 20s of aircraft that are in the Flexjet scheme, the original red, white, and blue. We'll have all the flight options scheme gone, so we started with the Phenoms to at least get rid of that. If we're migrating to a Flexjet brand, we wanted to at least get rid of the flight options. That'll all be done. We're a couple of planes away from having that gone. Right into the 300s next. That'll be next year's plan, is to work our way through that fleet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the plan is to keep them?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think if I wasn't clear before about the pyramid, we've have our theory about how we're going to use the airplanes in the different parts of the storefronts. So we have a luxury brand storefront in Flexjet. We have a more competitive, and think of them also in terms of level of commitment. Our Flexjet customers have a 5-year commitment with us. Our Sentient customers have about a 15-month commitment, and the Skyjet customers fly a trip and we don't know if they're coming back. And so when we're thinking about the fleet, we're changing our thought process. We want to have a fleet that services all of the committed customers, and we're going to keep the planes around, because why put them into a secondary market where they get operated by a charter company that just goes after customers that we can have anyhow?
Okay.
And you know what, Doug? This is probably 3 or 4 years ago when I talked about storefronts, and we were thinking about how to approach this market. And this strategy really didn't evolve until when we announced the big data. I think once we decided on this strategy to keep our planes longer and to figure out how to be of service, to not force our customer to buy our product, but to have, what's happening in the economy is you have to provide the customer what he wants, not what you want to sell him. And so we want to have all these products. That doesn't mean we shouldn't operate them and control the level of service and what we're going to do. So they're staying.
My next question is, what is the future of the Flight Options brand?
Well, this is the future. The Flight Options brand is where it's going to be. I mean, we made a decision to put the fractional store. We didn't need a 4th storefront. We didn't need 4 storefronts. We couldn't figure out what would be the brand, what would be the storefront brand if it was just Flight Options, and why. And remember, let me back up a little bit. The reason we have storefronts is because we want to have a different approach to the customer. Sentient is seldom in a customer's office. They're phone salespeople. They work in a boiler room. They get paid for, through turns of cards. That's not how you sell fractional. And we thought that a better approach was to not have a salesman go in and say, would you buy a jet? No, you wouldn't buy a jet. Would you buy a card? You want to buy a card? Can I get you a trip tomorrow? Right? It just looks disingenuous. And there's a different branding to it. There's a different way you advertise into that market. There's even a different way your salesman relationship is. Our salesmen at Flexjet, they know their customer. They're in their office. They go to their country clubs. You can't sell one-off charters with that kind of cost structure. You can't take a guy to a country club, buy him a $1,000 dinner, and then turn around and have one trip for, he goes from Cleveland to New York. So the market drives why we have different storefronts and a different brand and a different approach. And so therefore, we didn't see a different approach to the brand in Flight Options versus Flexjet. We wanted the brand to be more large cabin, more corporate, and that was the Flexjet brand. They were already there. So it was easier to transition the Flexjet brand over the Flight Options was an entrepreneurial brand. It was an innovative brand. It was a riskier buy than a Flexjet. Flexjet was often a safe buy. Big fleets of super mid-size aircraft. That was the Bombardier, that's the Bombardier culture and their customer. So we ran with that. we didn't want to tell customers because we didn't know we were buying Flexjet, so we didn't want to tell them those people had just bought Flight Options product 2 weeks before we bought Flexjet. Oh, your brand doesn't work anymore. So it took us several years, but this year, all Flight Options owners were told that we were about what our strategy was, that they'd be reached out, that they had options. What airplanes? Remember, some of them were in phenoms, and those airplanes aren't going, so their contracts just changed the name on it, but the economic terms don't change. And so we had to go through a 2 or 3 year transition plan, only driven by our not wanting to offend any owners. But the Flight Options brand is for all intents and purposes, you don't see it. You don't see advertising for it. So this is it. I mean, we have the same uniforms now throughout the company. The brand is Flexjet. And that's not but by the way, believe me, I started the Flight Options brand. Nobody would be more offended by the end of that brand than me. It was my baby. We shouldn't be offended by it at all. We're one company. We've picked a good brand to go with. That brand has only gotten more valuable since we've put it together. It's a good thing.
Okay, and then is there a plan or an option to break off Red Label into potentially a different company?
No.
That's just a rumor that we hear once
I wonder.
in a while.
I mean, what would that feels to me that would make no sense in the marketplace. That would make no sense whatsoever. The cost to do that. Now, what would I need? Another set of aircraft? I need an aircraft that could only fly the other company. Now I'm trying to. Some airplanes. I get the benefit now that maybe a Challenger 350 owner isn't excited when a 300 shows up, but he knows it's our pilots. He knows it's our standards. He knows it's our service levels. To create another company, the cost would be ridiculous, number one. So it would make absolutely no sense from a market standpoint. Feels to me a little bit like that's a rumor that starts from, the question is, are we going to try to more entrench this 2 different pay scale thing? Are we going to try to somehow, put the high paid group over here and the low paid group over here? It feels like that rumor, and I think we've kind of addressed that a little bit, John. When John asked the question, we have some issues with regard to contracting and but getting these pay scales more in line is the goal. So I thank you for the question. It makes no sense.
Okay, thanks.
In reference to your Forbes interview, you talked about getting out of the small jet market, except for the Phenom.
Yeah.
What's the future for the Lear, the 4575?
So let's go back to the reasoning again, just because every time I can reinforce it, I like to. We made a bet on large cabin because we see the real I always watch where capital is going. Who's getting funding? Who's borrowing money? You might have seen an announcement like Wheels Up just got another $100 million of funding. VistaJet got $150 million of funding. Jet Smarter got $80 million of funding. And they make these press releases. And I always kid our team. By the way, you've never seen us get funding, right? We'd like to make a press release that says, for another year, Flexjet needed no more funding, all right? So we made that decision because all that money is going into how to attack and democratize or make Uber out of entry-level aircraft. So what I thought was this is going to attack the margins on our entry-level fractional product. So we're going to migrate. If we have to be in a cost-competitive environment, we're going to go ahead and do that through a sentient product. That's our cost-competitive product. When we're up against Wheels Up, it's a sentient competition. Flexjet doesn't pretend to compete. Flexjet is Augusta, okay? Sentient is your local golf course. Wheels Up is your local golf course, selling you a round of golf. We don't have to come from Augusta and say, why don't you play golf here? It's the other thing. You shouldn't play golf here unless you want an Augusta experience. What that meant was that we needed to go into large cabin, and we thought margins would be taxed on the entry-level product. That doesn't mean we don't have customers that want to pay for an Augusta experience in an entry-level aircraft. We were uncertain when we started this, as we designed what we thought was an Augusta experience in the Lear 75 by taking the seats out, by making a light jet airplane as bespoke as possible. Truth of the matter is some of it I think is because NetJets is there, but the truth of the matter is that when we get that a person that wants to play Augusta, so I want to pay I want to pay an increased amount of money to have that experience. They really don't want to pay the more it costs to be in the size 75. We're selling some, but we're not pulling the plug on the program. But the traction's still coming in the Phenom 300. So I don't know yet. I don't know yet the fate of the 75. I like them a lot. And again, pride of ownership. Mike Sylvester and I spent a lot of time at the factory inventing the ottomans, inventing redoing the lavatory, putting that styling into it. So I have a lot of I have a lot of pride over it. So we're not done with it yet. But let me ask you another question. Has anybody seen how many Learjets have been delivered? I mean, there's a bigger problem here that's beyond us. And the question is, what's Bombardier going to do with Learjet? So it's unfortunate, but it's hard for me to see that brand's going to continue.
Can you tell us how many aircraft are going to be delivered in 2018?
Told you minimum of 15. We can induct in the low 20s. That's the capacity of the airplane. We'll get as close to that as we can. I don't know what they are yet, other than I know, Challenger 300s and Phenom 300s need to be here quick, because the Challenger 300s are used as our core fleet, and these are core fleet aircraft I need. So it'll probably still be, it'll be those two aircraft will make up 15 of the deliveries, and the remaining 7 or 8 will be probably at least half of the legacy 450s.
So can you mention Challenger 300? Are you still looking on the used aircraft
Yes,
market for the
for those
Challenger?
aircraft, for the core fleet aircraft, we will go into the used market for that.
And then the
Again, now I've just told every salesman that they can hold their price on Challenger 300s.
Sorry.
Then no, it's okay. I'm kidding.
Can you tell us what we're getting rid of next year?
Nothing. We've gotten rid of all we need to get rid of. The 400 XTs and 10s are done, and that was the huge transition. The only thing that the next thing in line is sending the legacy 600s to Europe. That's our growth plan in Europe. We're on our way to go to 8 400 XTs in Europe. So there's 3 there now, 5 by the end of the year, 8 going there. At some point in time, we'll move the 600s there. Probably not next year, because I'm short of that category of aircraft.
Okay.
I need those aircraft here right now because they're great core fleet aircraft. They can fill in for a lot of different situations, high density passenger lists, Challenger 300s. I mean, there's a lot of places they fill here right now. So I know it's a great airplane to be over in Europe, but I'd like to get them there, probably just because of what's happened domestically. They probably can't leave for another year and a half.
Is there any?
By the way, we can't have a large cabin international aircraft if we don't offer service in Europe. We can't drop you off, we can't drop you off in Milan in a G650 and then, now what do I do? If you like getting over there in that airplane, you're going to want some service in country.
Is there any production news or design news on the Ariane, and also any updates as far as the regulations that pertain to how fast it can go over the continental U.S.?
Yes, there's a tremendous amount of information, all of which they've told me not to tell anybody. So here we go. Now, I'll try to be thoughtful. The airplane, it's only gotten better in terms of the production. They now have an engine, a design team, and a little bit of a reconfiguration of the aircraft.
Okay.
And without giving it away, I will just tell you that when you put 3 engines on a tail of an airplane, you have an aft CG. Okay, and that makes an airplane grow very long, because now forward, the more weight you put forward, the more airplane you build forward, you can move that CG. That airplane was a very long airplane, 170 feet. So think about that. It's 70 feet longer than any large cabin aircraft. So that was a design issue, and they found a way by simply rethinking about the engine positioning to shorten the aircraft, which I think makes for a much better aircraft. And I won't say anything more than that. I think the airplane looks better, quite frankly, and they're going to make a big announcement about it. Okay. So it's still moving forward. Like anything in development, I think it'll take longer and it'll cost more, but that's just what happens when you build something from scratch. I think that it's still the only solution in supersonic that can work in the current political environment. Okay, it's the only one. Every other aircraft you read about, be them Boom or any of those ones, they all require a change of regulations. They all require some change, a political change of thought. Ariane does not. The concept of keeping that boom off the ground, which is one of the reasons it only goes 1.5 and 1.6. Could it go faster? Sure, but now the boom hits the ground. And so that's their engineering, that's their secret sauce to engineering. So it's the only one that can come to market in the current political regulatory environment.
Okay. Chuck?
How are we doing on competitive captures?
The competitive capture against NetJets has been the best it's ever been. The Red Label program, as I said when I've talked about Red Label, is something that's indefensible to them. The features of that program is something NetJets can't offer. If you look at, since fractional contracts are registered with the FAA, everybody knows everybody else's customer. When we would go into, so we know who their customers are, we know when they're expiring, and when we would attack that market prior to Red Label, we could count on about 95% renewals. Our customers and their customers. You could only grab about 5% of the market. In our first year of Red Label, now we're only in our second year, in our first year of Red Label, 37% of the contracts that were up at NetJets we captured. We went from a 4 to 5% capture rate to 37% capture rate. That's the success of Red Label. Now, not to say Red Label's the only thing, because overall throughout our program, 66% of our product has been in Red Label and 33% has been in traditional fractional. So we're not only selling Red Label, we are still selling the more traditional fractional product, and it will remain. This will never become only a Red Label product. What I want to tell you is that the competition has moved beyond NetJets. The competition for us is more and more, I think you probably all read about GE's shutting down their corporate flight department. I think to some extent that the sharing economy that everybody talks about, when you hear Jet Smarter talk about we're going to Uberize aviation, or we're going to make it a sharing economy. I actually think the sharing economy for us is more about the corporations. I think it's more about the traditional flight department that doesn't want the notoriety of having, the big corporate. They want to look efficient. I mean, GE is, they're a phenomenal company. They actually became a leader in this field, and I think I think our competition is beyond NetJets now. I think we have won a lot of those large corporation opportunities, and I think that's as much of a competitive environment, and we've had a lot of wins in that space. And when you win them big, because these are thousands of hours of contract for many, many years, and they're international, and they go across a whole broad range of your products.
Shifting gears, Ken.
Sure.
We're happy to see the business is going strong. Mm-hmm. We're busy. There's concerns out there that our operational pace, sustainment of our operational pace, could affect our service level.
Yep.
We're seeing out on the line, we're seeing 14-hour days, we're seeing 10 and 24 warnings, and we're seeing 16 hours going home. Mm-hmm. Do you see any relief?
Yes, please, because that relief translates to me economically. It translates to the company in terms of overtime, extra travel, in terms of sell-off. Let me see. I want to say this because I want our group to know it. I really don't want our competitors to know this. We reached a pass where we had this view of growing the business on the high-end aircraft. We had a point in time when the VSP came out where we didn't think we were achieving it, and we got scared. And not more than 3 months, 4 months later did it kick in. And so we caught ourselves, we made a little bit of a mistake looking at the market. We thought we weren't making traction. We misread the time it takes to sell into large cabin, and boom, it exploded. We caught ourselves behind this power curve. This is the problem we have. Not enough planes, not enough pilots. And we got it. We're here. I understand. There's not a magic wand I can fix it tomorrow. But I can tell you right now that our next year plan might have to be, we have a lot of new aircraft deliveries. We've been pacing at the rate. We can only induct a couple of dozen airplanes a year. That's all our infrastructure can do. FAA certification, transition plans for pilots, new training. It's only a couple dozen, and that's pretty talented. But the comfort level is probably 18 to 20. We're going to need 15 backfill aircraft just to relieve what we've done. We took no Phenom 300s this year on the basis. Remember, I'm always making a capital play. I only have so much money to spend on aircraft. And I'm going into big aircraft. And remember this, one G650 in capital was the whole 400 XT fleet. I could have kept all the 400 XTs or one G650. So I'm making a capital balancing, right? These are the risks of the transition. So it got out of kilter. It did. So we didn't buy enough Phenom 300s. So then we ended up backfilling those into the mid-cabin aircraft. Next year, we're going to need 15 aircraft just to come back to normal from where sales has been. We got that. It's in the plan. That's the first thing we'll do next year. What we're thinking about is what are the other 5 to 8 airplanes going to be? It doesn't go. It's not that I haven't perceived it. It's always this industry. We always have too much flying or not enough flying. We're struggling for the perfect balance. I will tell you, I don't want to bore you with too much math. But I have mentioned this project called Big Data. And big data is the code word for the integration of all of our customers. We have customers that are in the on-demand market at Skyjet. We have customers in the Sentient program. Today, none of those customers end up in any of our core fleet aircraft. They don't end up on any of the Flexjet. Flexjet is having trouble just, we want to keep sell-off charter to 3%. We're about 4.5% now. We need to get that back down. And we'll do that. There's a lot of airplane deliveries right now, so we'll get this under control. But ultimately, what we want to have is too many airplanes. I want to have enough airplanes so that everybody that's a fractional owner gets a very bespoke experience. And during the slowdowns, when I have too many airplanes, I want to be able, through big data, to find trips, either in the on-demand market or in the Sentient product line, that can be brought up to keep a normalized rate. We have too much flying per airplane. Let's say we want to fly 1,000 hours per year per plane. We're flying above that now. But I want to normalize the fleet so that in a normalized time, the fractional people are getting a hell of experience. And in a slow time, I'll dip down into the lower groups, into the other groups, the people that aren't expecting a Flexjet experience, to keep my fleet at the annual average. This will relieve the problem. I need more airplanes. I need 15 more airplanes right now to relieve that valve.
Let's segue into something else that can relieve the problem. New hires.
Yes.
Where are we at with new hires?
There is a pilot shortage in the commuter airline world and in the on-demand charter world. We're not having that. The applications are there. New hires are in process. We're processing them quickly. We're finding talented people, and so that would have been the first indication that something was askew for us. It's not. And if it was, there's no reason for me not to say it, because if it was, we'd be actively trying to get in, to get your help to get people in here. That's not something we're experiencing right now. It's only we were about a month and a half late in recognizing it. I want these to be jobs. I don't want these to be temporary jobs. I want to hire people that want to be here. And so we haven't hired, I haven't hired since I bought flight options back in 2009. The company hasn't hired since 2006. So believe me, I'm not sure we were up to speed. I think we had to dust off the hiring booklets. I don't think we knew, so it took us a while we wanted to rethink and redesign and really do something that would create the right person coming in here. If we hire correctly, we've solved every other HR problem down the road. So I didn't want to cut it short. That was about a 2-month delay, but we're there, and they're coming.
Good, thank you.
Under that same vein, being competitive market with the majors, how's our retention with first officers? Is that an issue, or?
It's hard to say. I tend to think we do some interviewing and so on. By design, first officers are young in their careers and they have more opportunities than they've had when they might have been first officers 10 years ago. I tend to think my data that I get out of HR tends to be, it's not so much about the pay it's more about the anxiety of the seniority list. People want to know. People will stay if they understand, if I have a 5-year progression to move up, but I think there's this anxiety about what's it going to be, where am I going to fall on it, how many red label opportunities will there be for me, and I think that that creates the consternation more so than I don't see salary, I don't see compensation as being the issue yet. But remember this, I'm not allowed to change first officer compensation, so I can't adjust it without going through the process. So I can't spend a lot of time worrying about it because there's nothing I can do about it.
Thank you.
Where do you see the future of our in-house training program going?
Okay, one other company secret that now 700 people are gonna know. In the last 3 negotiations, Gulfstream 650, Legacy 450, Challenger 350, I've negotiated in that Flexjet gets the use of the intellectual property necessary to build our own simulators. Okay, so my vision, I wouldn't have negotiated that if my vision wasn't to expand and control more of our in-house training. Part of it's financial. Part of it is that I understand how the training markets operate. You don't have to look beyond. Anybody know what the G650 training slots cost? Is this circulated around?
Can't imagine.
$100,000 per pilot.
Wow.
A simulator costs $8 million. The intellectual property is mine. The intellectual property is usually about double that, but I negotiated the intellectual property. So for $8 million, I can build a G650 simulator. How many pilots, if I put 12 pilots through a year, I've got a $1.2 million savings, and we're gonna do more than 12 pilots. So you know where my head is.
Yes.
So part of it is I wanna control the quality of what we do, for sure. But a lot of it has to do with I want to control I want the financial control of where that program is. Simuflight and Flight Safety, have taken those programs and they've been printing money on them every year. They just continue to raise the prices, change the rules of engagement, and so I think that's a pretty good indication that I have some plans for the training department.
What kind of time frame are you seeing for that?
Well, it's 2 years to build the simulator, which is about right, because we're building large cabin program. By the way, the G500 program isn't any cheaper. If we're going to be in the large cabin program, so once you decide I might as well spend $8 million for large cabin simulators, the next thing you say is, well, once I'm building out a simulator department, why would I stop there? I might as well have the Legacy 450 and the Challenger 350. I might as well have those 2 simulators also. So you get very quickly, once you make the economic decision on the large cabin aircraft, that you might as well do it in-house, control the training, enhance your own safety department, and do that, then it's pretty easy to just say the rest of them need to, so we're moving in the direction of more in-house versus more outside.
All right, well, that answered the second half of my question.
Now all my competitors know they're gonna all go out and negotiate now for the intellectual property with the manufacturers. So don't tell everybody.